For those with Drive, the Standard H podcast has reached nearly 70 episodes, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the positive encouragement over these last 2+ years. If you haven't yet done so, I would like to kindly request 2 minutes of your time to rate and review the show, as it helps others discover these episodes. Thank you so much for your time and for all of your support. Now let's get to the show. Brian Groodt is the founder of Colorado-based Dispatch Custom Cycling Components, a line of bike accessories primarily comprised of anodized headset caps. Those of you who are fans of the Standard H Cycle Squad will know our headset stem caps were produced by Dispatch. I've found Dispatch by way of its Instagram marketing strategy, which Brian and I discuss later in this chat. Needless to say, the quality of the product is wonderful, and I was stoked to partner with him. During my recent trip to Denver, I met up with Brian just before he left town to close the deal on a home purchase in none other than my home state of North Carolina. We discussed Brian's affinity of the word why, his short-lived experience as a guitar player, how Dispatch got its start, the unique importance of personalizing your bike, and how its recent acquisition of financial partners are contributing towards the growth of this e-commerce-based business. I sincerely appreciate Brian's insights and candor, and I'm confident you will too. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard H podcast. How do you pronounce your last name?
Groodt.
So it's phonetic.
Yeah,
more or less.
Kinda, if you just drop the last D.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that Dutch?
Dutch, yep. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Is that why you're into bikes?
Yeah. No, I don't know if that's because
it's in your blood.
Bikes, but yeah, I think it has been in my blood. But definitely in my own personal blood from a kid. Basically I was racing bikes of some sort from 10 years old on.
Sweet.
Yeah. So it was kind of always part of me.
Where did you grow up?
Just outside of Monterey, California.
Oh, NorCal.
Yeah.
Cool. My wife's from Palo Alto.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was growing up in Monterey, basically Palo Alto was, it's just a field. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of crazy how much that place is blown up.
So this is cool. Yeah. We're in a WeWork. It's funny. Several podcast guests originated in a WeWork. And frankly, really? This podcast is 2 years old, and prior to recording the podcast with some of the people, I had met them 6-7 years ago when they were in a WeWork.
Oh,
so
funny.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. So the WeWork vision finally coming together.
Yeah, totally.
Meeting people.
Growth matching, how the brand is projected. But, well, Brian, thanks so much for being a part of the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Wesley.
The coincidence of me being in Denver just before you leave is awesome.
Just passing in the night, right?
Yeah.
2 ships.
So I love your branding. Dispatch. So what is the full company name?
Dispatch Custom Cycling Components.
Okay. Now, how did you come up with that?
Well, I had a really complicated name initially that was probably too witty, and just decided to whittle that down from Visibilia Custom Headset Caps, which was kind of the vision of, this is a thing that you can see, and, it's kind of a play on Invisibilia, if you've ever heard that podcast, but I was like, Visibilia. So this is the thing I want you to look at that you tend to ignore pretty regularly.
Right.
Headset cap in the cockpit is not something most people pay attention to until they do.
Right.
And so that was too complicated, it's too many times spelling it out, VISI, so it's like, all right, let's go with something, that is more meaningful and interesting. And, Dispatch was kind of one of those things where I came up with, just thinking about my time in New York City and Washington, D.C., and just kind of watching the messengers get dispatched out from their little hubs on the corner of the streets. I'm like, Dispatch, that works.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so my understanding is you grew up in Monterey, California, and Monterey it's a beautiful place. There's lots of fantastic riding. I think of Monterey Car Week, obviously.
Yeah.
Which is a big spenders type of an event.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in Monterey?
It was pretty nice. It's a beautiful place by geography for sure.
Absolutely.
I think the difference between growing up there in the 80s, 70s and 80s, and what it is now, if you wanted to stay in Monterey as a kid, graduated high school, you had to choose to work in maybe a hotel, maybe a cannery if there was one left.
Sure.
Industry wasn't a thing, that not really much to speak of. and remote work was definitely not a thing. Right. And so, had I known, fast forward 20 years later, that work would be anywhere you want to be, probably would have stuck around. But, I've gone on to see some pretty amazing stuff and live in some pretty cool cities, and I'm better for having left the small town.
Sure. What did your folks do?
They worked in basically in utilities, so power and telephone.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was high school like for you?
It's funny. I really think back on those times a lot because it informs kind of the aesthetic of my brand today. And
there's definitely like a punk rock vibe.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So like if you kind of, booked my early childhood by music and by activities, it would definitely be a lot of punk rock. Probably pretty early into like the late 70s punk scene, especially the stuff that was coming out of the UK, and then
Clash.
Yeah, Clash, the Damned, where I was really into the Damned, and then kind of moving from there into more of the West Coast and the East Coast punk scenes, and then basically transitioned from there into kind of thrash metal. That was
well. Who were the record labels, right? Because like a lot of bands were defined by the label they were on.
Yeah.
So like who were the labels?
I never know the labels. That's funny. The only one
funny.
Yeah, exactly. I think about labels now. I'm like, the only one I can ever think of is like Sub Pop, right?
Right, sure.
So like everybody knows Sub Pop because you see the T-shirts everywhere. But
I saw one today.
Did you?
I'm not joking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw some kid walking around the other day with a Metallica shirt on, and it was like size extra small or something that it came out of the local Nordstrom or something. Like, oh, okay, I get it.
Totally.
It kind of makes me laugh. But
may have even been Target.
Yeah, could have been. But I think just in general, like the bands were kind of almost like secondary to the scene. I was on skateboards, on skate ramps in somebody's backyard all the time, skateboarding in parking lots, riding bicycles everywhere. From the earliest day I can remember, it's probably my first memories actually was, being on a bicycle and building ramps and trying to destroy,
trying to kill yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which I've got pretty close to succeeding a few times, but it was always always outdoors, always dusk to dawn kind of thing. Just trying to stay out of trouble and stay out of the house.
Right.
Avoid school.
The street lights come on, it's time to go home.
Well, by somebody's rules, not mine. But
really, so your parents were pretty relaxed?
No, they weren't. But it was like I think that kind of informs who I am today. Like rules were always to me like the most important word that came around a rule was why.
Right.
And,
totally.
When you're young, basically you get told because I told you so, but it's like, well, that's not really sufficient. So what else do we know?
It's funny. I was listening to a podcast on the plane coming out here, the Tom Segura podcast, and he was talking to Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how his come up was very much because I said so.
Yeah.
And he's like, as a coach now, you can't even pull that nonsense,
yeah.
which is like crazy. Do you have siblings?
I do have a sister. Yeah.
How were the rules around your sister?
Yeah, I would say I probably got away with more than I certainly was the more difficult of the two. And maybe that's just first child syndrome. I don't know, but
I see.
Yeah, for sure. I think, maybe it wasn't that she got away with, or that I got away with more, but maybe she saw the trouble that I got in and was like, I don't want any of that.
Learn from your mistakes.
Exactly.
Cool.
But it's funny you mentioned Deion Sanders because I saw Neil deGrasse Tyson speak at one point in time. And he talks a lot about how parenting, of course, is, your number one job is to keep the child alive, right? But number two is to raise it and become a good, functioning human being.
Samaritan, yeah.
Yeah, and the whole concept of they're naturally born scientists because they do things and they break things. Children do things and break things, and that is kind of science at play, right? And so I drop an egg on a table and it breaks open. First thing a parent is like, why'd you do that? What are you doing? Don't do it. Right. And a scientist would look at that and say, that's interesting. What did we observe? What did we learn? And I think that's the same thing from my perspective. Like, why is that question or why is that thing necessary? And for me, that's just kind of been central to my entire life. In fact, I'm working on a headset cap right now, just a little teaser, but it basically says on it in giant block letters, who says, ? Right. And I think that's like our choice in life, our conversation with ourselves should regularly be, who says that I have to, or that I can't, or that I should, and that's up to you to answer. Nobody else can answer that for somebody.
Right. Where did you end up going to college? Did you go to college?
Yeah, UC San Diego.
No kidding.
Yeah, studied economics only because at that time there was no business administration class. That's what I wanted to do. In fact, I wanted to go to NYU to study finance, Wall Street. Kind of growing up in the '80s, and you see
Wall
the
Street.
movie Wall Street. Yeah, exactly. I want some of that, which was totally misguided, but. In any case, it's it's like business.
You might have
economics.
dodged the cocaine habit, though.
Yeah, exactly. Probably pretty safe on that one. Yeah. I mean, 80s and 90s finance in New York City,
booming.
Yeah, I don't think they're quite getting, or they weren't into the things we see coming out of there now with hey, we're overworked and we're not having enough fun.
Right.
It was all on.
So you studied economics. What was your first job out of college?
First job out of college, I actually went to a recruiting for a company in Southern California, and I walked in looking for a job, college kid, and they said, "Well, we don't have any jobs, but we have this opening to be a recruiter here, and would you be interested in taking basically a sales job as a recruiter?" I think it paid like $1,500 a month or something like that on a draw, and it's like $18,000 a year. Like, okay, this is the start, right? And I think I quickly learned that you better get out there and hustle and try to do something else.
Beat that draw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure, beat the draw, but also maybe if that's your early worth in a market, if that's what they've told you you're worth, then maybe start thinking about what do you think you're worth and how do you get to it.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, sales is always, I think, a function of, how hard do you want to work, and, are you good at what you do, and can you get better at it?
Right.
So there's always upside, I suppose, but, selling some college graduate on a career at Enterprise or something like that, or selling copiers or long distance, it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this for a living.
It's funny you mentioned those, because those are oftentimes like precursors to like pharmaceutical sales jobs.
Yeah.
Especially selling copiers. If you can sell, Xerox, you can sell anything.
Yeah, that's what we do. We'd, see the kid that we put in a job 2 years previous and say, okay, now you're ready for your next level up. You sold a bunch of copiers or whatever. And
totally.
Do you want to go to work for a pharmaceutical company? But, I left that industry kind of thinking, I think maybe Bill Clinton was president at that time, but, it's like, I can make a call to anybody, I can pick up the phone and pitch anybody on anything at this point in time and not be afraid of it.
Yep.
And I think that was a really valuable lesson to be able to, take from that portion of my career. But
yeah, phone etiquette is, it's invaluable.
Phone, but also you just realize, especially when you're trying to generate business, in fact, I think I went on from there and started selling equipment leasing at another company, which is just brutal. It's an awful business.
Sounds terrible.
Oh yeah, it's like you're calling CFOs and you're trying to talk to them about finance, right? It's like, okay, sure, get off my phone. And but you take the no's and you get the yeses, and I guess rejection just becomes one of those things that you kind of assimilate with, get used to, and
sure.
If Bill Clinton didn't want to take my phone call, I'd call him tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Call him again.
So you said you've spent some time in New York and DC.
Yeah.
Which came first and what took you there?
New York City first. I moved there September 2001. Horrible timing.
Wow.
And I was there in software. I was working in the software industry, and it was a brutal time, being totally candid.
Where was your office?
I was working for a company that was actually in Silicon Valley, but I was in the New York City area, basically handling, I think from Washington, D.C. north all the way up the seaboard.
But physically, were you downtown?
No, I was in Manhattan on the Upper East Side.
Oh, Upper East. Okay.
Yeah. But you arrive there and you're unpacking the truck and you just, smell this horrible aftermath. And, even driving out there, I had been out in Philadelphia, I think a couple of weeks before September 11th, and then, knew that I had commitments to be in New York City. So it was like,
sure,
it is what it is, but I had a great time there. It was incredible city. Obviously it was going through a healing moment. I see the parallels now between the COVID situation and, where New York City was kind of, everybody was betting against New York in 2001, 2002. And, don't ever do that.
There's no way they're going to allow that to happen.
Never take a bet against New York City.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, right?
Totally.
The can do, the diversity, the resiliency there is something I've never seen anywhere else. That being said, it was a pretty rough place to go from Southern California to New York City. So you go from, pretty easy, lazy, sunny and sunny days. Weather. Yeah, exactly. To, all the way into New York City. And, nobody has any time for anything there, right? So it's like, hurry up, kid. What do you want? What do you need? So when I moved to DC, I always said I should have gone in the reverse order, gotten my training wheels taken off in DC, and then moved up to New York City, and probably would have been a little better experience, or a different one for sure. But either way, they were both incredible places, and I cherish them. We go back to New York City all the time. So
sure, yeah, I'm actually going twice in this latter half of the year, and somewhat of a second home for me. Really, I've just been going my whole life.
Yeah,
and I love it. And I always go in December because I really do enjoy wearing a coat.
Yeah,
which in San Diego never happens.
Yeah,
like the pea coat, whatever coat, the down jacket, it stays in the closet unless I travel. So between snowboarding and just hanging out in New York during the holidays, which is the best time to go.
It is a beautiful time there, and I think it's it'll be interesting to see how this year is. I've had Rage Against the Machine concert tickets there for I think since the month that everything got locked down. So they obviously didn't do the concert in Madison Square Garden last year. So we rebooked, and then again they canceled this year. So
really,
are these guys going to be old enough or young enough to actually get out there and perform when it's time to do it?
Will Zach give a shit?
Yeah, exactly. Or the moment's passed and they're no longer angry. Who knows? But so I'm definitely looking forward to getting back out there for that.
Given how much you loved music as a kid and you're into thrash metal and such, are you a musician yourself?
I own a harmonica, which I play horribly.
Amazing.
I only keep it in my bag because every time I go to travel, TSA thinks that it's some sort of incredible weapon. And so they make me pull it out of the bag every single time, which I find amusing. Sorry to waste our government's resources that way. But I tried to actually play electric guitar for a little while, call it 2008. And I bought it. I went to Guitar Center. I'm like, usual path, right? Like, who do you like? What kind of music do you like? Who's your favorite guitarist? They're like, okay, you need a Fender, right? You need a Fender Stratocaster. So I take this thing home. There's no here's how you play the guitar when you leave Guitar Center. Like, okay, next guy, get out of here, right?
Right.
So I get this thing home, plug in the amp, figure that much out. The amp makes some noise, plug the guitar in. And it just sounds like cats screeching in the alley. I'm like, what in the world is wrong with this thing, right? There's something wrong with this guitar, of course, right? Couldn't be me. So I try to do the YouTube or whatever. I forget what online courses I was trying to, grab tabs from and try to get the finger positions and everything else. It's just not working. It's getting super frustrating. I think at that time I was probably 40, maybe right around there.
Okay.
38, I guess. Yeah. And, so I'm like, that's it. I've had it with this thing. I'm putting it on Craigslist. Right. So, put it on Craigslist, this guy, older guy, and like a 15-year-old kid and a 15-year-old girl come over to my place. And the dad's like, yeah, this is my daughter's boyfriend and he's interested in the guitar. I'm just checking it out for him. And the kid puts a guitar strap around his neck, plugs it in, and just starts wailing on the thing. Just sounds amazing. And I'm like, oh, dude, all right, fine.
So
just
deflating.
Give me the $500 and get out of here. So it's like, all right. So I suck at guitar. I don't have any ability there, but I did play saxophone and trumpet as a kid, so I can read music, but apparently I can't play it on a guitar.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. So was that guitar quote unquote experience, I guess, was that in New York or where was that?
No, I was in California at that time. Yeah. Okay. So after I left Washington, D.C., I went back to Orange County, actually, Laguna Beach, and was hanging out there for a while. And
software?
Yeah, still. And then, trying to figure out how to get into a hobby, which maybe is a little too much, but
right.
I don't know. It's funny. I just turned 50 and kind of keep going back to like, maybe I should get myself a guitar again. I'm like, no, don't do it.
Learn that lesson.
I mean, maybe it would be better if it was, I don't know, a Gibson or something, like,
right. A different tone.
Change all the
tone.
Yeah, exactly.
The tone.
Or, I don't know.
That's
maybe let's go acoustic. Who knows?
So what brought you to Colorado, and how did Dispatch actually launch?
Yeah, I was racing mountain bikes out here a lot. I was on for a little while. There was a group called the GT Dirt Coalition, and it was when GT bikes tried to kind of get their cred back on the mountain. And basically, it was kind of you got fully kitted out, right? The pop up, the kit, the hats, the bike, of course, everything else. At Sea Otter, they had like they had this like cheerleader team, which probably would not fly at all right now, called the Gold Diggers. It was like straight up females in, the shortest skirts.
Next to nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That were supposed to be, I guess, on the trail rooting you on as you got, gas going up some hill. But
and Sea Otter's in your backyard.
Yeah, it was in Monterey. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Laguna Yeah. Which was cool actually as a kid to see. It was really weird. It was riding out there because you see where the former military base was there. And it's like, basically stay on the trail because off the trail there are potentially
mines.
Yeah, exactly. They're like,
really?
just don't deviate from the trail. You're like,
you might get detonated.
Okay, so like, don't cut the trail because you're ruining the trail, but this is also like, don't cut the trail because you might get blown up. So it's like, okay, we'll stay on the trail. So anyway, so that was a good time, and went out after. So obviously you get to keep all the gear and everything after your GT relationship's over, and I think after that GT sold again. I forget who picked him up, but.
I think he just came back into the business, didn't he?
Who knows? I mean, I
heard something recently that the owner, forgive me, I forget his name.
Yeah.
The guy, I want to say it's Greg or something. Isn't GT his name?
No, yeah, it was, God, I should actually
Greg
know
or
this,
George.
Right? Yeah.
Anyway, doesn't matter.
But they got passed around by so many different companies. It's kind of going through that whole, smaller U.S. brand that got popular. Think of like Schwinn, Homegrown, that kind of stuff, and then they get picked up by a PE firm, and then, manufacturing goes overseas, and then they find out that this is a really low margin business, and it's horrible to, to try to sell bikes. And so they're leveraging this brand. It's getting diminished. It gets sold off to somebody else, and, then it goes dormant, and then it comes back. Right. So this is kind of the thing with a lot of those legacy brands, which is unfortunate because there's incredible stories to tell there. And
totally,
you see a company like Vans that has been able to keep their story pretty consistent, and super low margin business, but still doing it incredibly, right? And it's like, why can't the same thing with skateboarding, right? Like, why can't skateboarding and shoes, et cetera, be this kind of this instructive model for the cycling industry? But in any case, they, you get to keep all your gear. So I was coming out here and racing a lot, and I was doing like Leadville and Leadville 100 and stuff like that. And I would, spend 20 hours in the car coming out to Colorado to, I'd stop in Utah, make some races up in Park City, and then kind of head out this way and then head back. And at that time, California was going through some transitions again in their tax system and stuff like that. And I was like, I think I need to get out of the state. Like I'm born and raised here. I love the place. I'm native son, obviously, but, and I miss it every day, of course. There's nothing like waking up on a beach with, a little coastal fog and 70 degrees waiting for you a little bit later. But
sure.
I was like, I'm leaving. So headed out to, out to Colorado, to Boulder in, when was that? 2000, shoot, I'm going to jog my memory, 2014. And, been out here ever since. Love it out here. It's crazy.
Cool.
The number of Californians that are out here now is,
it's astounding.
Yeah. I guess I'm obviously not native, but I've gotten to that point now where I see a California plate. I'm like, another one.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because like Boulder. So one of my best friends went to CU.
Okay.
And so I used to come out here from North Carolina, just spring breaks and stuff, go snowboarding, hang out in his apartment and whatnot. And, fell in love with Boulder, which was, I think, then called 27 square miles surrounded by reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, the rents started climbing, and then it became almost like a hotbed for entrepreneurship, really.
Entrepreneurship, but also tech. A lot of,
tech specifically,
Palo Alto VCs moved out this way because they want access to that CU talent. It's producing computer science grads that are amazing. And it's like anything else, when you start an industry in a particular area, somebody leaves that company, starts their own company, they hire more people, and it just kind of becomes this big industry.
Yeah.
It's funny because last year, we went to, was it last year or the year before? I guess it was last year. We went to a New Year's Eve party. So it was 2 New Years ago. And there was bottle service at this party. And, if you know Boulder's history, you know that the bottle service, like, you might have brought a bottle in with you, but you didn't buy a $1,000 bottle of champagne from somebody, right? And so
that's insane.
It was kind of interesting just to see, like, our little mountain town has become, a tech town. And there's nothing necessarily right or wrong with that, in my opinion, but it's just kind of wild to see the transition in a place that I think has its roots in kind of dirt bagging.
Yeah, I was going to say crunchy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now it's there's still that scene for sure, but it's funded.
Totally. So Dispatch came about in what way?
So when I left California, just before I left California, I was actually going to ride race, whatever term you want to use, because at the time it wasn't really thought of too much as a race, but it was the Tour Divide. I wanted to do the from Banff down to New Mexico, Antelope Wells. So I connected with a bike builder, frame builder in California, Brendan Collier, and he owned a company called Siren Bicycles. And they were really well known for basically being the rig that crosses the Tour Divide. There were a number of well-known racers that had been on their frames and kind of had reached out to, at that time, I think it was like, I don't know, MTBR or something like that, one of those forums that was active. And everyone was like, oh, you need to go talk to these guys, get a custom built frame. So I did. I had a frame built. And
what was special about their geometry?
Well, what was special about it to me was it was a soft tail. And so soft tails are super hard to find anymore, and they were pretty hard to find back then. But it had, basically 1.5 inches of rear travel with a Cane Creek suspension system. So it sat right between the saddle and the chains, or the seat stays. And that gave just enough cushion to, kind of take some of the punishment out of the road, but
super efficient.
Yeah, super efficient. Exactly. So you can still climb on it and get going, and that was a pretty amazing thing to me because, nobody wants to spend 2,700 miles having their teeth rattled out of their head. Right. So
totally.
And the big giant fat tires were not a thing. I mean, I remember walking into a Specialized shop and somebody was down to like, a tire that had the width of like an iPhone today, right? That's like the thickness of an iPhone. And I was like, and they're like, this is amazing. And it was a mountain bike. I'm like, I don't think razor blades on dirt is a great idea. Like, and now you look at it now, it's the complete opposite, right? Where everybody's gone super fat. So, anyway, so I got around to getting that bike built, basically suffered an injury that kept me out of doing that. Canceled the last minute, and but still stayed pretty tight with Brendan. And I think at that time he was looking to make some transitions out of that business. It's a really, really rough business.
Totally.
His business model at that time was like basically sell one, build one. And my thought was if we could build in smaller batches, not by the thousands, but maybe by the tens, in standardized sizes, and kind of use the brand assets, the logo and just the heritage of the brand as marketing, so put it on merch, things like that.
Sure.
We could actually make a good business of this. So I ended up buying the business from him. And that model worked out pretty good. I would say for sure. I mean, there's at least one picture on Instagram with somebody that has the Siren Mermaid tattooed on their butt. I have one on my arm. It's like people were really into this brand, and I always kind of describe it to people, not to sound like a conceited person, but like if you look at Ferrari, there are way more hats and keychains and mugs and cups and everything else.
Oh, it's licensed through the
and there's nose. Like it's got to be 1/100th of the actual Ferraris that are actually ever sold in all time, right?
Totally.
And that's okay. It's people want to be associated with a brand that they can't necessarily maybe afford the $300,000 car, but they still dig what it's doing. And
it's the aspiration.
It's aspiration for sure. And also like I can look at a Ferrari or a BMW or a Porsche or anything else and have great admiration for the work and the beauty that went into the design to make that.
Absolutely.
And maybe not even necessarily want it, but I can sit there and look at it and respect it. And so maybe I want to be connected with that kind of aesthetic. And so the Siren was kind of the same thing, not to the tune of Ferrari, but we sold a lot of hats and mugs and everything else. And I got connected with a local laser engraving shop here. And I started doing some branded merchandise with Siren logos. And then we started doing some of our own original artwork. And before you know it, we became kind of known as the headset cap company instead of the bicycle frame company.
Funny.
And that was not good for business. It's like, we don't want to sell $25 headset caps when we should be selling $2,000 mountain bike frames, right? So we transitioned that business out of Siren. We still have Siren today, but we just basically manufacture a single bar. Basically, it's a bar that's used to relieve some pressure on the back for people that like to do the Tour Divide type rides and things of that nature.
I see.
So you can kind of keep your standard mountain bike flat bar setup or even a drop bar setup, but keep your mountain bike geometry so you can get across some of those secondary roads, but still get a better alternate hand position.
Cool.
Kind of more aero. But in any case, that's that story. But we took Dispatch and turned that into what it is today. And that's, basically we can sell to anybody pretty much on a bicycle, right? Which is great news because with Siren, it was like you sell to Siren
pretty
people.
Specific.
Yeah, exactly. And headset caps are pretty universal, obviously.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to stop there.
Except for Giant.
Yeah. Let's
Those
talk about
jerks
Overdrive.
cannot do that. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, that's brutal.
As a TCR owner, I can say that.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, obviously, the one thing that the bicycle industry loves is standardization and a new one every week. So it's like,
that's hilarious.
We'll keep this standardized, but we might actually just add 1/8 of an inch to this headset cap for no particularly good reason. It's like, okay, sure, fine, why not?
Tapered steer tubes and
yeah. Tapered hopefully is doing well, but. Yeah, the extra 1/4 inch or whatever on the overdrive system. Why?
Right. So for those listening, so what is the bread and butter, right? Like what's kind of the marquee product for you guys?
Yeah, our bread and butter is basically that piece of cockpit that you look down on in your bicycle and you see as you go up the top tube right up to where the steer connects with the handlebars at your stem. There's a headset cap there, right? And that's basically. After you've built the bike, it's really just, it serves two purposes, right? One, if you go over the bars, you don't have a nice puncture wound from your exposed steering tube. But secondly, it's dust cap, kind of just aesthetics. It rounds out the whole look of the cockpit. And typically, nobody touches them. It's just kind of this piece that maybe it says Chris King on it or King Creek or, some other brand on there maybe.
Or nothing.
Yeah, most say nothing because you can buy them, by the tens of thousands and slap them on your bike and you're good to go, right? But I just saw that as this piece that represented two opportunities to me. One was I think there are about 17.5 million bicycles sold in the US every year, right? And we have 300 million people in the US, right? So something's kind of weird about those numbers, but let's just assume that 17.5 million is accurate, right? That they actually land here and sell. And obviously last year, everything sold.
Right.
But we know that there aren't 17.5 million new riders on the road every single year. And part of that was, in my mind, people buy bikes, they get into it maybe for a second and they put it up on the garage wall. Your typical sales process at a bike shop, hopefully you bought it at a local bike store or a bike shop is, you sell it, they roll you out the door. Maybe they call you back for a 100-mile service or, come back and see us in a week and we'll help, tune the cockpit or make some adjustments to the fit or, oil your chain
Stretch
or whatever.
Cables
yeah,
or
exactly. Yeah. It's a little break-in period. And after that, people just kind of ride off and you see it all the time. Like I've seen so many bikes on walls and garages that are, rusted, flat tire, just not getting used. And to me, that's just tragic. It's like, why did this person buy this bike in the first place and put it up on the wall? It could be a lot of reasons. I think the one that stands out to me, and this is the reason why, for me, Dispatch community is so important, is that there is a certain profile that is sold bicycling, and there's a certain look, and it's no coincidence that when Lance Armstrong was racing, that was the look, that was the body profile, that was the thing that sold a ton of bicycles, right?
Yeah.
And what I know,
hence the compact crankset as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
spin to win.
Yeah, can we get 100 RPMs out of this thing?
90 to 100 cadence. Yeah.
Meanwhile, and I know this from the emails that I get from my customers, and it's hard living here in Boulder because that is the profile of a cyclist in Boulder, right? But when you step outside of Boulder and maybe some other major areas, you find out that most people are using their bicycle for utility. That utility might be for getting to work because they, screwed up and had a DUI and have to get on the bicycle or can't afford a car. Like, I mean, it happens all the time. I get stories like this pretty regularly.
Totally.
Or it's therapy, right? It's mental therapy. That's the other one. And I think that what I don't see often that the industry is pitching is I'm an aspiring pro tour rider, right? Like I never get that email. I get emails about like everything. Like I lost my wife. This is the way I'm getting back to rehab to, I had kids and I've been off the bike for 20 years. And this little piece, this $20 piece is actually the thing that I needed to actually inspire me to get back on the bike and get it off the wall. Yeah. And it happens all the time. And I think that is, that was always the promise of the bicycle to me as a kid was I could get out of the situation I was in. And I don't think that goes away as an adult. I think you still have things that you have to deal with that a bicycle can be very capable of helping you with, I mean, there's, a whole range of things, right? From everything was, like I said, as simple as like, I need to get to work to, I need to, if I can say it, unfuck myself, right? Which is one of our best selling headset caps. It's just I need to get out of the situation I'm in and this is a vehicle for doing it. And I love that. I think that's, that is the beauty of what we're doing right now. Yeah, that's amazing. I think there's two things that can totally transport an adult back to childhood. And one is a bike and the other one's ice cream. Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that because I used to always say, especially when I would have bad days, because as a kid, I had written out this little business plan to be an ice cream man. I wanted a bunch of ice cream trucks. And my number one reason for that was nobody ever gets mad at the ice cream man, and it's true. Like bicycles and ice cream, like, maybe I didn't miss my calling as an ice cream man, but I hit it on the bicycles. Well, it sounds like you need an ice cream cart that like doubles as like a storefront for your headsets. Pedaling around. Yeah. I like that. Go to the local Seattle or the Seattle. Just don't do it today because it's 100 degrees. Yeah, no ice cream on there either. If you haven't heard episode 1 of the Standard H podcast, then let me tell you about my friend Tim Jackson. As owner of Passion Fine Jewelry, Tim and his team specialize in fine jewelry as well as some of the finest independent watch brands available. I'm talking about Groenfeld, Habring, Kudoki, Roger Smith, Roman Gauthier, Sarpaneva, the list goes on. The staff at Passion Fine Jewelry is literally made up of friends and family, so you will feel right at home if and when you visit. If California is out of reach, you can absolutely email or call the shop and they'll get you sorted. Visit passionfinejewelry.com for more information. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of using the right product for the right job. And like many of you, I appreciate products with a story. That's why I drive a Volkswagen GTI. It's a hot hatch with heritage. It's also why I'm into specific watches like my Tudor Black Bay. And that's exactly why I'm a fan of the indie accessory brand Cantonment. Cantonment makes a utilitarian cloth they simply call a kerchief. It's smaller than a standard bandana, but larger than a handkerchief, which makes it ideal to tuck in a back pocket or use as a neckerchief. I always take one on a bike ride or have one with me as a backup face covering. Not only do these kerchiefs satisfy several functions, but they look great too. Each set features illustrations celebrating icons of product design like the Omega Speedmaster, the Fender Stratocaster, or my favorite of course, a classic GTI. Follow them on Instagram at Cantonment Co. That's CantonmentCo, or visit them at cantonment.co. And use the code STANDARDH in all caps, no spaces, for 20% off of absolutely everything in their online shop. Now let's get back to the show. Basically, Dispatch sparked, as you alluded to, with this relationship you formed with a laser engraver, did you say? Yeah. That's so cool. So is that still the person you're using? No, that didn't, that was kind of, it didn't scale well. So it would literally be running headset caps down by batch to the engraver and then, transporting them back to the shop and packaging them up, and way too many steps involved there. I see. And I wanted to do two things. One, when we were doing outsourced laser engraving, they were all standard artwork. And as I have come to know, we may not be the wittiest or the funniest or the most capable of putting what you want on your bicycle. And so opening up that opportunity for somebody to say anything they wanted to say on their bicycle headset cap was important. And being able to do that quickly was really important. And so it wasn't going to work on an outsourced model. So we actually took all of that functionality in-house. Literally, I was doing it out of the basement for 3 years until we just recently moved into new shop, and went from 100 square foot to shop space to I think we're at 1,500 square feet now, and I have no idea how all the stuff that's in that 1,500 square feet fit into 100 square feet. It's just like the clown car. You're like, how many more clowns could possibly be in this thing? It's insane. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's great. And it's been a big move for us. We're bringing on color printing as well. So we'll be able to do color caps, but, anyway, yeah. So the whole idea there was to be able to respond as quickly as possible to an individual customer's request. So a customization to, text on the headset cap. But also to be able to more quickly create our own work and be able to bring those online, within a matter of, literally we can do it within a matter of hours versus, potentially days in the past. Yeah.
So how do you go about finding I guess you own the machinery to do it now, but do you CNC those parts? Cause they're steel, right?
They're aluminum.
Yeah. They're aluminum. Sorry. Yeah. So they're aluminum caps, but then they're anodized as well. Mm-hmm. And then you print on top of the anodization.
Yp, exactly. So we actually,
is that the right word?
Yeah.
Anodization?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Spell check never wants to say it, but yeah. So they're anodized, and what you're actually doing is you're ablating the very top of the cap. So you're taking off just a very thin portion of the material. I think it's like 0.02 millimeters or something like that. It's super, super thin. But what that does is it gets past the dye layer, because anodizing aluminum, you're basically just permanently dyeing the aluminum. So that gets...
Oh, so it's almost like a bath?
It is a bath. Yeah, it's an electrically charged bath. Yeah,
I mean, I'm very familiar with anodized parts, especially having worked in a bike shop in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
But then it's also... it is so permanent.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like baked on or how
it's
anodizing works.
Super nasty process of some pretty gnarly chemicals, and basically you introduce electricity into the bath, leave it in there for a certain period of time. Based on how long you leave it in there, certain colors come out, certain dyes produce other colors, etc. But
cool.
Yeah, it just it's as permanent as you're going to get. Now, you can ultimately fade it in sun if you leave it out in the sun long enough.
Sure.
But I guess
decades.
Yeah, unless you live in Arizona, right? Minutes.
Yeah.
Or here right now, but so it definitely, what you're doing is you're taking that off, and that exposes a kind of a grayish white material underneath. That is the raw aluminum that you're looking at that point, and that basically the contrast between that and the anodization that's left creates the image. So,
sweet.
Yeah.
Who do you consider to be your competition?
Well, I think competition is really not much right now. And the reason I say that is we have an impulse purchase product, right? So people, like for instance, you go to Google, and, we can see how many queries come through for what we sell. And it's not high on the mind of most people until you realize that you can do it. And then they're like, oh, you see 4, 5, 6 visits from the same person before they actually make a purchase kind of thing. And
interesting.
But you're not, the intention-based search of, can I customize my headset cap on my bicycle is just not there, right?
Yeah.
So our competition is really to intersect and say, hey, here's a way that you can make that bicycle uniquely yours. Yeah, exactly. And it's affordable, and it just that's the competition is mind share, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. But
cool.
Yeah. There are, of course, other companies that will engrave headset caps and things like that. They'll engrave a lot of things, but I actually saw a company out of Australia recently that just came online. They're out there. I think what we produce and the product that we're trying to put in the hands of the customer and the way we do it definitely differentiates us. And I guess the other side of that too is we didn't stop at headset caps, right? So we really wanted to try to create a brand that had a lifestyle aspect to it.
Yeah.
I think I've shared this with you before, but there's this kind of this soft, side of cycling, right? Think like pinks and yellows and, the kits and everything else. And
well, pink is also very punk rock.
Yeah. Pink is
in
awesome.
a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. I can't get the pink that I want on the headset caps. Anodizing doesn't do the pink. I'm actually going to go to Cerakoting soon, which will give us some really cool, deep, rich colors. But those will be pretty limited edition. But, point being that, that there's this kind of this 135 pound soft, can't punch out of a bag kind of image that's going on that we just know as cyclists, that's just not true. Like cycling is hard, and it can be brutal. And
totally. You watch any Tour de France crash in how they recover and or put up with the pain.
And get going. Yeah, exactly. And maybe they don't make it back the next day, but I mean, how many of us would have gotten on at all? Right. So,
I mean, look at what Chris Froome's done.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that guy in theory could be dead.
Yeah.
He's so resilient.
Yeah. And he's, and so I think that's lost in a lot of our marketing messaging. And, there's a couple, I have some serious conflicts with marketing and cycling in general. I think that, body imagery and the type of profile they're trying to attract versus the reality of the industry are totally disconnected. And even if you are, that aspiring pro tour rider, you're not weak,
Right.
And I saw more darkness in the sport than I think a lot of the industry does. And not darkness like, depression or something of that nature, but more like, hey, this is tough, and we should lean into that a little bit. And so our brand aesthetic is really, in tune with that and trying to make it seem, that this is, and trying to make the industry seem like it's this soft, easy sport. Way too much of the audience is lost, and so we're coming at it from a completely different angle to say, here it is. Here's, as I always like to say, less posh, more punk, right? And that's our kind of our ethos of our brand.
Yeah, I think a lot of people it's lost on too. They don't even think about the quote unquote dietary restrictions that a lot of these guys are on, which is just insanity.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so I showed up to my first cross race and. I think I was about 215 pounds, 6'1", 6'2", whatever. And, first time racing cross, got my Yeti cross bike and super stoked on it, and I get out there to the lineup and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to get over one of these barriers, like just the, get off your bike, get over the barrier kind of thing without, completely going head over ass and, or ass over head. And, I'm at the lineup and I hear two dudes talking behind me and, I'm in a, whatever, like some Pearl Izumi kid or who knows what it is. And they're like, who's the woolly mammoth?
Yeah. Who's this like linebacker?
Yeah. And I'm like, woolly mammoth is not nice. Right. So it was like, how inclusive are we being here really? And what kind of image are we trying to promote? And that just kind of, I've always thought about that as, like we need, and it's super popular now and it's a little frustrating to see brands, kind of doing what they have to do to sell more bikes now. But, if that's what it took to make it happen, then that's fine by me, I guess.
Making it inclusive, you're saying?
Yeah. The new body, if you look at, any of the new ads in Bicycling Magazine or something like that, you'll see a lot less, I should say, of, the 135 pound, bean pole on a bike, right?
Yeah.
Now
the airplane wing for arms.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Now it's like, somebody you would actually walk by and you probably would walk by them in any other portion of the world outside of cycling, but like that person looks relatively fit and healthy and fine. And for some reason we've just leaned way too far into this image of like, you need to be ridiculously, below weight. I mean, I think of like George Hincapie, I think at the time he was racing at like 145, 150, something like that. And they used to always call him Big George. I'm like, come on.
And he's he's at least 6'2".
Oh yeah. He's a tall dude. Yeah.
6'4" maybe.
Yeah. And so I just, it's like, well, if that guy's considered big, like what shot do I ever have of really being accepted in this industry? And anyway, so, off with the rant, but that's kind of that's the rest of the market. That is the 95% of the market that we see. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even consider it a rant. I mean, I think it's a really important touch point on the industry, so I appreciate you sharing. The move into the 1,500 square foot space, was that due to scalability?
I have a lot of bumps and bruises and scars from tripping over
Bumping into
things.
stuff?
I honestly, I have no idea how. So in, 2018, I split shop space with a guy who roasts coffee and delivers it by bicycle here in Boulder. Sweet. Josh Crane. Yeah. Great dude, great spirit. Like, was always great to walk into the shop and just have, two entrepreneurs trying to hustle it out. And, we were splitting costs and everything else. And, but because I had such small space there, then I had like storage offsite, and I had, at that time we were living in an apartment here in Boulder, and, like after you took all the expenses together, like, wow, if we just bought a house and had a basement in it, we could get rid of all these other expenses, probably cover half the mortgage, and be able to literally walk downstairs from, bedroom to work. And that sounded incredible at the time.
Totally.
And it was like, it definitely served its purpose, but like now we have UV printers, and we have some other things that emit weird, smells and things like that, noises. The dogs were always running from the printers because they were beeping and whatever else. And, so like, here's Brian down in the basement, basically no light, snows outside, you haven't seen the sun in multiple days, not riding bicycle. And like, what, this was okay, but we need to figure out a way out of it. And so for a year, I drove past a building every single day, and I was like, oh, we're going to get that space. We're going to get that space. And, I think the first time I said it, I was like, yeah, sure. Maybe we will.
Pipe dream.
Yeah. And then, being really candid about it, we did really well through COVID. Cycling obviously took off.
Yeah. The industry. Yeah.
Yeah. It was nuts. We had fortunately put our orders in with our suppliers for raw stock to stay well ahead of any potential shortages. We did stock out a couple of times, but fortunately, we're able to keep that going pretty good. And, basically that got us into a position where we can have shop space now, like legitimate real shop space.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you buy the raw materials from a different supplier then?
Yeah. We
actually, you personally anodize it.
Yep. No, we don't anodize. So, we will do the Cerakoting, and we will do the engraving or the printing, but the stock comes to us anodized. If you've ever watched a video of anodization process, like you don't want it you want it nowhere near you.
Okay.
It's
gotcha.
pretty nasty stuff. It's unfortunate that anybody has to do that work, but and I'm sure if you run a large anodizing factory, you can do it hopefully somewhat safely, but it's gnarly.
Are there any steps or any kind of efforts to kind of protect the environment? Because it doesn't sound like it would be healthy for runoff, for example, or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. We source, as most of the cycling industry does, out of Taiwan, and Taiwan actually has a pretty severe water shortage right now. So we're really careful because it takes a lot of water to go through the anodization process.
I see.
So we're really careful to bulk our orders and say, like not what have we historically sold, but where are we going, and how do we do this one time so that we can have, as minimal of an impact as possible. Cool. And we're not specialized, right? We're not buying units by the millions or whatever, but
right.
Yeah, it definitely, I've worked with our suppliers about packaging, so like, I don't want any plastic in the packaging. I want to be able to reduce as much as possible so that by the time our product arrives in the hand of the individual that is going to install it, the package itself, so the envelope is recyclable. The tin that we package our product in is actually reusable. It fits an ID and a driver's license or a credit card, and you can basically slip it in your back pocket as a little ID and cash, and maybe a flat repair or something like that in your jersey or wherever you want to keep it. Sure. I've seen some pretty creative uses for that. And then the packaging itself, like everything else is in there, it's pretty minimal impact.
You guys do those cool wallets too.
We do the Tyvek wallets. Yeah.
Which is basically like a FedEx envelope, right? Same material.
Same material that you would put on your house to keep it from water from seeping through the drywall. Yeah, exactly. Funny because my first experience ever with Tyvek was in the bike packing world, where people were trying to make like tents and almost like jumpsuits out of Tyvek so that they could sleep on the ground with as light of a kit as possible. Sure. Unfortunately, it doesn't breathe very well, so it's not a great place to be.
Box.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really good for keeping water and mud and sweat and whatever else that might come about on your dollar bills or whatever you keep when you go on your ride. So,
yeah,
and it's super thin. So.
What's been the approach to marketing the product?
Yeah, I think a little bit of twofold, I guess. So one, we're obviously pretty vocal on social. I think we keep a strong presence there and try to get as much user generated content coming back our way as possible.
Cool.
And that's, I think that's at a individual consumer level. And then we work with a lot of race directors, bicycle or frame manufacturers, event directors, things of that nature that buy pretty large quantities. And so we have proactive outreach there that helps us to, generate that business.
Cool.
But otherwise, I think it's been largely a social play. I'd like to see some more in the real world type connection. And we had some pretty decent plans for last year, but that got squashed.
Budgeting, do you allocate? Is it like the traditional 10% of revenue or whatever?
No, it's funny to say that. I was speaking with somebody about accounting the other day, and
our favorite topic.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, here we go again. But that concept of budgeting for marketing came up, and I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that way in a paid social world because you're buying traffic so long as the traffic is performing and the sales are converting. And when that dips below, you kill that campaign, right, but you don't kill that process, right? You don't say, well, we're just not going to advertise on social, or we're not going to post here anymore, or we're not going to pay for imagery or creative or anything else of that nature. It's kind of like the salesperson in a company, right? It's like, well, is this person making more than their salary and producing a profit for us or not? And if they're not, we replace them. We don't get rid of the sales staff, right? So, right. Same idea here in that I can't budget for it. At least I haven't figured out a way to do it without saying, basically, show me X number of percentage return on every dollar I invest here. And when it dips below that, we stop that and we move on to another one. But the number at the beginning of the month is let it run.
Right,
just keep going.
Have you had a pretty positive experience with, say, Instagram, or do you guys focus on Facebook more? Or are you using Google ads or?
Yes, all three.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I think the best performer by dollar invested is Google. Because it's intention-based search. Somebody's looking for the product that we
words.
sell. Yeah. But the problem is what we talked about earlier, which is volume, right? I can't, if there were 5 million people searching for that product every day or month even, I wouldn't need to advertise anywhere else.
Right.
So, and being an impulse purchase and a lifestyle brand, that lends itself naturally to Instagram and Facebook. So we advertise pretty heavily on both. Instagram is definitely a better performer for us at the end of the day. It's something I've been talking to my team about quite a bit lately, which is, we know that when cyclists are not on their bicycle or at a coffee shop, they're on Instagram talking about their bicycles. So right, why are we not getting more of that traffic? And the reason is it's gotten very expensive, right? So you have one entity that owns essentially that entire market, and paying for that is basically pay me what I tell you to pay me, right? So it's not, you're not buying traffic at 10 cents a visitor or anything like that of that nature anymore. So certainly not for the type of folks we're looking for. So that's been the rub. We're spending a lot of time and effort to actually transition out of that portion of the marketing side and get into more of an owned asset. So we had a huge sticker campaign I guess it was about 1.5 years ago, where we got tons of uptake, email address, name, home address.
What was that? What was the effort? What'd you do?
We ran ads on Facebook. So, but the call to action was, give us this information, we'll give you this particular sticker. And that worked out really well. It was kind of a Netflix knockoff that said single track and chill. And it was super popular. In fact, we have a picture of somebody posting one at the Netflix headquarters. But,
no way, that's awesome.
Yeah. That was the call to action. The problem with that initial campaign was, it turns out people love free stuff even if they don't ride bicycles. And so we have to, what we're working on now is trying to figure out how do we get a little more filtering in there so that we get the most relevant audience versus, hey, we have 10,000 people that want stickers. It's like, well, 1,000 of them ride bicycles and would be interested. So we're gonna work on that. But I think once you own that relationship and you treat it well, you treat it with care, and you create community around it, then you're in a way better spot than a single time transaction. Somebody that came to you on Instagram, bought something from you and left. So that's where we're working now. A lot of referral too. Referral.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
What is sort of the effort to bring down that like 6 visits prior to a purchase to maybe that bringing up the conversion at an earlier visit?
Sometimes I think it's just shopping habits, honestly.
Do you think it's them just visiting like, will my text fit? And so they keep coming back to see if their actual slogan will fit on their personal cap, because that's where my brain went.
Yeah, I think there is some of that for sure, because what you're looking at is a blank sheet of paper, right? You can say anything you want to say on it.
Right. Right.
Now, what do you want to say on your bicycle that, your buddies are going to see and that you're going to look at all the time you're on the bike?
It's a commitment.
It's not a tattoo, but it's, it's definitely a bike tattoo that could be removed. But it's a commitment of sorts. And I think anytime, I hate to think this way, but people do in some ways need to be told what to do and how to make a decision, and limiting that is actually pretty good for getting somebody to make a decision.
Totally.
On the converse side of it, it's, hey, you can say anything you want to say, and so maybe that does take 6 visits to come back. But by and large, I don't know, every once in a while I'll see transactions that come in overnight at 3 a.m. So at best it's, midnight. Yeah. Midnight in California and 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. in New York. Right. And so I'm like, what's going on there? And it'll be for some, outsized order versus everything else. You're like, is this ambient shopping or what are we doing here? So, but we've never had any returns. So it's like, okay, well, I guess that's how that works. People stay up till 3 a.m. shopping for bike parts. I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and especially over the last year, there's been a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of people. So
yeah, no kidding.
What is your team comprised of? How many people are on your team?
So I just took on a few investors. So I have 4 partners in the business, and then myself, and then I have pretty much everything else is either contract basis or relationship that's as needed.
So you took on 4 people at once?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
were they all just buddies, or?
No, there's a consortium of 4 people that basically run a group that invests in businesses that are running from 6 figures, healthy 6 figures, to and their attempt is to get them to 7-figure business. And basically reached. I had been somewhat of a fanboy of one of the guys for a while, so I knew him. I knew what he was up to. I knew his success. And e-commerce is not there is definitely a lot of problem solving in e-commerce on a regular basis. And being a solo entrepreneur has its upsides and its downsides. And one of those downsides is you don't always have somebody to bounce problems off of. And I didn't necessarily want to bore my wife to death with, hey, here's what I did today. And I don't necessarily want to hear her work stories, other than I love her and want to be, partner to her.
Supportive, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't really care what Susie Cream Cheese did in, the copy room today. I just don't care, right? So I don't want to bother anybody else with those stories either. But when you're a partner, you have an obligation to everybody to row in the same direction. And so for me, that was really the most important part of it. And also, I think while we've done well to get to where we are today, we have way more potential. Like I said, there's 17.5 million bicycles that are sold every year. Pretty much every single one of those is an opportunity for us to put something on there. Yeah. We're nowhere near that, right?
Yeah. So, I bet you would love 1 million units. Out of the 17 million.
I used to, so, when you buy a car and you get the license plate frame around the back of it, I was like, if I could just be the license plate frame of bicycles, I don't know what they're making on each of those frames, 50 cents. I don't know what it is, but
right.
If that's what we cleared on every single transaction times 17.5, I'd probably be on an island somewhere by now.
100%. Yeah. So how are you spending your time off the bike or excuse me, out of the shop?
Out of the shop. Yeah. It's something that I struggle with, honestly. I think about, what's the old adage about the cobbler's children having no shoes kind of thing, and so it's like, how often am I riding my bike? Not often enough. And that,
it's the same in the golf industry.
Yeah. I think it's probably the same in any industry. I remember when I was in high school, I used to basically cut class and go hang out in the photography lab all the time. And all I wanted to do was take photographs, and that's all I did all day long.
Cool.
And then I got a job working for a local newspaper, and it became a job to use the camera. I was like, this sucks. Yeah, so I want nothing. I literally put down a camera for probably until I would say I picked up another one, started investing in some decent gear again about 5 years ago.
What are you shooting with?
Right now I use mostly the Fuji system. I say mostly because I did just for only for web purposes. I swear. I picked up a Sony A6400 and I shot some stills in it. I was like, wow.
Blown away.
Yeah, the image processing that comes out of the Sony is amazing, but so is the Fuji. So I can't complain either way, but it's like, what's your favorite bike? I don't know, the newest one I just bought, right?
Right.
So
it's funny because we were talking about that and I did a post, I think. So I just got a new mountain bike and I was just like, oh man, check it out. Like the new rig just arrived and it's like #N+1.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's not a great habit, but it is true, right? It's like, this is the one, this is the only one I need to, this is my go-to in the garage. And my go-to in the garage right now is actually, I think it's a 2013 salsa casserole, which was a cross bike, steel cross bike, and
great brand.
Yeah. And it's, still kind of has some of that salsa heritage in it, from the early days. And, I run it as a single speed with, gravel, tires on it. And I've ridden that thing everywhere across races and everything else, I'm sure I'm not, the most efficient on a set of gravel tires on pavement, but I love it. It's great for me. And that's my, I have 3 other bikes that sit next to it, but it's right. Like, this is my one,
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So back to your question on what do I do outside of there? I mean, when I can, I ride for sure. I think I said to my wife last couple of months ago, after last year, living in Colorado, and I was running quite a bit. I was trying to finish out a 100-mile race in Leadville, running race. And I started getting a lot of stink eye on the trail from people because I was, obviously running without a mask because I don't want to waterboard myself while I'm running, right? So like I need to be able to breathe, and it's outdoors, you're probably more than 6 feet away for 95% of your time. And, it's pretty breezy here. So, anyway, so I stopped running, and that kind of set off this bad process of like, hey, you need to like be more deliberate about it because now I'm not training for a specific event.
Right.
And so it's really easy to be sucked into the business every single day where you just kind of over your head with, the task list that never gets shorter, basically, right? So for me, that's been a real area of focus. And then I love motorcycles. So my COVID purchase was a Ducati. And
what'd you get?
I got a Multistrada. So this is
absolutely.
Yeah. This is my 7th Ducati, and I have a total love affair for that brand. I've had them since.
I'm the exact same way. I've always wanted an 848 in pearl white.
Those are beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. The 848 is a great bike too.
Like it's like everything you need and nothing you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 1199 Panigale, great. But a Formula One car for the street is just not appropriate.
Well, even the Multistrada, I got the 1260, and we have some pretty decently exposed trails out here, and you do not want whatever is an 800-pound loaded bike on a trail that's 6 inches wide that you're trying to get across without dumping it into the ravine beneath you. But
that's amazing though.
Yeah, no, it's a great bike. I rode it out to North Carolina actually last year, and saw some friends, kind of did the COVID tour, and brought it all the way back out this way. And
so you have an interesting looking watch on. It's under your cuff, but I saw the side of the case.
It's a
Bell & Ross?
It's a Lumtech.
Oh, Lumtech.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Are you a watch guy?
I'm an aspiring watch guy. I love watches. I do. It's funny. My love affair, I guess, for watches is back to design in many ways.
Totally.
And in some ways, maybe making up for my past a little bit, because I used to have this whole philosophy of I don't believe in time. And I think as you get older, you better start believing in time.
Well, especially when you own a business and you need more than 24 hours in a day.
Absolutely. But the reason I love wearing this, I rode my motorcycle in today, but I can actually see it. Right. So I can see the hands. It's not like a Apple Watch, where it's like, I don't know what that says on there right now. It's so small. I have no idea, but
totally.
Yeah.
So you're about to make a move to North Carolina, which is my old stomping grounds. What promoted the move from Colorado to Wilmington? Yeah,
so we're actually buying a vacation house out that way. So it's not a permanent move yet.
Got it.
But so I did spend some time out there, and funny enough, like of all the states that we toured during our COVID time, North Carolina just kept coming up on the list pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Then we had some friends that moved out there from here and kind of got our attention. And then we have some friends that live in Chapel Hill.
Sweet.
So we spent some time with them, and they have a condo down in Wilmington. And so we kind of got to know the coastal area. And, having grown up in California, you see a very different type of beach life than you do back in California.
Absolutely.
Like, this is pretty cool. Now I just have to figure out how to buy a $4 million boat or whatever. But
are you guys near the water then?
We're at downtown Wilmington.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Copper Penny. Is that still around?
Yeah. We saw that when we were out there the last time. It wasn't, for some reason, wasn't open.
I got really loose at that place about 20 years ago.
Looks like there's no shortage of places to do that there.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. I was looking at the kind of the census data on Wilmington, and the population growth there has just been insane.
Gargantuan.
Yeah, it's like 20% since the last census, which is massive. Other places are like 2 or 3%.
Right,
so
right.
Something's going on there. So.
Well, this has been super fun, Brian. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for setting up and coming out here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Well, we'll chat soon for sure.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Huge thanks goes to Brian once again, and to all of you for listening. As stated in our last podcast, all of the Avant tees are back in stock, and double extra large is now available. As always, big thanks to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for the theme track, as well as to Clear Audio for providing the noise-canceling headphones. I sincerely appreciate all of you listening. Please do rate and review the show wherever you're listening to this, and I will catch you in another 2 weeks. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another.